Good evening and welcome to the Grill Report with Nicole M. Wells and Charles W. Kim. How you doing tonight, Charles?
Pretty good, pretty good. How about yourself?
I've had an interesting last, 24, 48 hours, something like that.
And why is that?
Well, emotions are running a bit high, depending on who you talk to, on Twitter, with regards to Alfie Evans, who we discussed previously on a previous show. Alfie Evans, as people probably know, passed away 4 days after he was disconnected from his life support in the UK.
And this was a baby.
This was a 23-month-old baby. So there were members of, they called themselves Alfie's Army, which were supporters of his parents in their plight to take their child to Italy for a different type of care, possibly a different type of treatment. So basically, I've been very active in voicing my opposition to what was done to that family on Twitter, and mind you, I'm fairly new to Twitter. I ended up taking a class that I needed to finish my degree program. And
by the way, congratulations. You are now a bachelor's in journalism.
Well, thank you. Long time coming.
From Rutgers University.
Well, let's not say where it's from, but anyhow, so yeah, I had to take this class in order to finish, and interestingly enough, the class was social media technologies, which is not really anything I would partake of on my own. So I had to get on Twitter, and so I did, and I've just slowly been building this, this following, and I just encountered all these people who, are apparently, well, allegedly, we won't say apparently because it's hard to know if you're online, allegedly citizens of the UK, that are all kinds of angry with me about, my positions. So it was kind of like this battle of the words on Twitter. So that was an interesting experience.
And being that you're a very unique millennial in that you don't have a Facebook account or any of the standard, until this class you didn't have any of the standard social media presence that a lot of folks have. No,
there's no Facebook, nor do I ever intend to have a Facebook, because, look, America, what they're doing with your data. Not that you really should be surprised, but, because I'm not. But, that right there is red flag number one. But I have no intentions of having a Facebook ever. Instagram is for people who take pictures, and I really can't be bothered to take photos. I would much rather actually experience something than sit there and document the experience. I just can't be bothered documenting it.
And the other thing, too, is I do have a social media presence, and you often chide me for getting involved in discussions on various and sundry topics of a controversial nature.
No, we have to make a very important distinction here, okay? First of all, often is being generous. It's frequently, okay? And number two, it's not so much that you're getting into these discussions, it's the emotion behind the discussions. You tend to get much more wrapped up in it than I do. I really don't care what these people have to say. I just choose to engage them because if you're going to call me stupid, good luck, because I will slay you verbally. But yeah, so I don't really care. I don't put any sort of emotion behind it. I don't.
But you do feel very passionately about the Alfie Evans case. I don't want people to misunderstand when you say you don't care. You certainly care about Alfie Evans and what happened to him in Great Britain, to be taking these positions and making your opinions known on Twitter.
No, absolutely. I'm saying I don't care in the sense that I don't care what people say doesn't really impact me. I don't get too wrapped up in it. To me, social media is very much like high school online. Anybody who tells you differently is just kidding themselves. I mean, have you seen the content that's posted
Well,
online?
that's the discussion of this podcast.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess, were you surprised at the level of passion, at the level of vitriol that was unleashed on you for holding the positions that you do?
I was slightly surprised. I mean, I knew to a certain extent that the churches in Europe are fairly empty these days. I'm counting Great Britain as Europe. I mean, they're trying to leave, but for right now, they're still stuck. So, I'm aware that, the percentage of people who believe in a higher power has been dwindling. So, for me, in my little profile for Twitter, I had put Amish Catholic, which is a joke to a certain extent, but meaning just very simple, back to basics Catholic. And people just basically took that and ran with it, saying all kinds of things about, excuse me if I could speak, the Catholicism has eroded your brain, and just all kinds of hostility such as that directed at me simply for being a Catholic. So I found that somewhat surprising. I did not expect the percentage of people to be as high as it was that, bought into this narrative of, well, that's the best way the whole thing could have went.
And the parents should have no rights to care for their children.
Well, I had basically what happened was, so there was, an official, blue-checked organization that put out a tweet basically positing a question about, if the Alfie Evans case has changed the legal landscape in the UK, should it, because basically parents' rights are being steamrolled by this bizarre system of law they have there. And so I responded to it, and from there it took on a life of its own. It was just amazing. So my response included the phrase, the natural rights of parents, and, and there's several people that have been engaging regularly, but one of them basically said that in the UK, parents have no rights. And I just found that utterly shocking. I'm not a parent. I probably will never be a parent. But to me, to sit there and say parents have no rights, that's disturbing. That's... Who do you think raises your children? What is it, just rent a womb over there? And, it's just... stuff some sperm up there and out pops the child, remanded to the custody of the state. To me, that's disturbing.
That's the key element here, is that they look at it as once the child is born, it is the possession, if you will, of the state, of the government, that they are the ultimate arbiter for that child.
Yeah, basically. There was more than one person that was telling me that in the UK, parents have responsibilities to children, but they have no rights over them, which I just found utterly disturbing. So, yeah, I can't imagine a system like that over here.
And this is in Great Britain. We're not talking North Korea or Russia or communist China. We're talking about England, which certainly we fought a war to be independent of them, and certainly we can see why now.
Well, and I did mention that to them. I said, this is kind of why we left. Just saying.
And they certainly insulted you for being an American too.
Oh yeah, there were all kinds of things like, "Are you stupid or just American?"
But you see,
or both, and to which I responded, thankfully American, but, and I also mentioned to one of them that once you start with, slinging personal attacks, Nobody cares what you have to say. I mean, you could have
You've lost the argument.
the best tweet in the world, but you've already lost because, you're not arguing on the merits, of what you have to say. You're arguing on, what children do in the sandbox at 4 years old.
And the reason I wanted to bring this out during the podcast tonight, or this week, is that this is not limited, obviously, just to people of the United Kingdom. Excuse me. There's also a good share of that over here in the United States. And when you get involved in these discussions, what happens is there are a number of people that immediately go to name-calling, insulting you on a personal level for having an opinion different from theirs.
Yeah, it's almost like, groupthink, and how dare you deviate from, the groupthink mentality.
And surprisingly, it's coming from the more, quote, tolerant, unquote, side of the aisle.
Well, side of the aisle and side of the pond. The Brits are always claiming to be, at least, in public mentality, are always, the liberal darlings, with their socialized medicine and, everybody's taken care of, and, you would expect a bit more from people who are supposedly such liberal, tolerant individuals. You'd expect just a little bit more, especially, and I did point this out, especially when everyone in the world has an opinion and has something to say and running their mouth about what goes on here in America and American politics, especially if you listen to mainstream media, the Russians. But, everybody has an opinion, everybody has something to say, but heaven forbid you actually have something to say about what goes on in their country, what problems they have, wrongs that are committed on their soil. That's somehow an issue, and then you're told, stupid American, you just need to go take care of your own country, because you have enough problems, and stop bothering with ours. Which I find amazing, because morality doesn't really abide by national borders. What's wrong is wrong, whether it's committed in Mexico, Argentina, Iceland. It's still wrong if it's wrong. And I think part of the problem is that, liberalism doesn't really operate with a moral compass. It's whatever everyone feels is okay is okay. There is no definite right-wrong, and I think that's the problem that these people are running into, is they don't understand my position, because my position operates on, the binary right-wrong, and they're not operating under that same system.
No, and it's amazing, because this is a group, and there was actually an article written on this, and I actually ended up in a Facebook war of words, so to speak, on this topic about the left feeling that they are so superior, and when you see these arguments, and you can read them, they're all over Facebook, they're all over Twitter. They're all over social media, and I'm sure you have, if it's not yourself, you have a friend who's engaged in one, and you can start reading through the comments. And I don't know if it's the anonymity of the internet. I guess it's a lot easier to call someone names when you're not in front of their face. When you're safely in your own house, behind your computer screen, you feel empowered to call someone stupid, racist, idiot, Nazi, whatever, moron, and some much stronger, that you feel much more empowered to say that to someone else online through a computer screen than you would certainly say to their face. I mean, if the way I was brought up, if you said something like that to somebody's face, you normally got punched in the mouth.
Well, and I would argue rightfully so. You learned real quick what you should or shouldn't be saying to people. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy what people will say when there's anonymity thrown into the mix. That just changes the whole playing field in general.
And one of the things I want to bring up is because of these arguments that you get into online and the back and forth, there was an issue that came out of the White House this week. President Trump was holding a roundtable with various people from the border states and several from California. I believe it was a lot of them from California because they were talking about California's move to become a sanctuary state where illegal immigrants could go in there and not have to kind of be blocked from being picked up or deported by ICE, even though they were illegal. And there are several states throughout the country and New Jersey is one of them. Governor Phil Murphy says he's trying to push through that so that we can do that and protect these illegal immigrants from any consequences from them not being here legally. And part of the conversation had to do with Fresno County Sheriff Margaret Mims. Now, Sheriff Mims was speaking as part of this roundtable, and they were talking, among other things, about the illegal immigration problem and building the wall and the support in Southern California where the border is. The support that's growing, and a lot of California cities are looking to not be sanctuaries, or that there is some pushback to them becoming sanctuary cities. And one of the things she was saying was that in her capacity as sheriff, she had worked really well with the ICE agents, the federal ICE agents, with in the jails in Fresno County to help deal with some of the people, the criminal element of illegal immigrants that were coming across the border and being able to deal with them. And the subject got brought around in specific to members of the MS-13 gang who have been documented to have committed some horrible, heinous crimes, murder, rape, mutilation, some of them beyond belief. And these are documented. I mean, anyone who says this is not what's happening, yeah, it's happening. Look it up. Look it up. But what happened was President Trump commented on what she had to say, and what he basically said is, yeah, these people are animals. Well, everybody went crazy, including most of the mainstream media and social media. Everybody went crazy, saying that President Trump called all illegal immigrants animals. And, right away, Democrat Chuck Schumer in the Senate and Nancy Pelosi in the House went right away saying these are people and, how dare you call them animals. And they have, I believe Nancy Pelosi said, they said something about having a divine heart. Well, if you have a divine heart, you don't butcher two teenage girls, rape them, and mutilate them so their own parents can't recognize them because you beat them so badly to death. That's not what people with a divine spark of humanity have. So, what I'd like to do is, before we continue this on because there are some aspects of the social media that came into play after this, but before, so there is no confusion. We're going to play for you the audio clip of the discussion with Margaret Mims, the Fresno County Sheriff, and President Trump. That whole 2.5, 3 minute exchange in context. In context, so you can hear the whole thing. And we'll let you be the judge.
Now ICE is the only law enforcement agency that cannot use our databases to find the bad guys. They cannot come in and talk to people in our jail unless they reach a certain threshold. They can't do all kinds of things that other law enforcement agencies can do. And it's really put us in a very bad position. It's a disgrace.
And we're suing on that, and we're working hard, and I think it'll all come together. Because people want it to come together. It's so ridiculous. The concept that we're even talking about is so ridiculous. We'll take care of it, Margaret.
Thank you. There can be an MS-13 gang member I know about. If they don't reach a certain threshold, I cannot tell ICE about them.
We have people coming into the country or trying to come in. We're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that's never happened before. And because of the weak laws, they come in fast. We get them, we release them, we get them again, we bring them out. It's crazy. The dumbest laws, as I said before, the dumbest laws on immigration in the world. So we're going to take care of it, Mark.
So that was the total context of the remark.
That was just utterly shocking. I mean, I don't know how I can get past that. I might not sleep all night.
You know, the funny thing is I was actually watching this entire roundtable when it was taking place. And I mean, I was working on other things, so I was, kind of listening with one ear on it. And basically everyone going around the table was saying exactly the same thing, is that there are criminals among among the illegal immigrants that are coming in on the southern border. There are a good number of criminals, of bad people who have done horrible things. And as you went around the table there, they were talking about the impacts to local towns. There were a couple mayors there talking about the impacts on local towns. And the one mayor was a businessman who emigrated here legally from Lebanon and is living the American dream. So, I mean, this wasn't a round table of all old, white, conservative guys.
As you would probably be led to believe.
Yeah, I mean, there was diversity around this table, and they were all saying the same thing, that there are problems on the southern border, and that some of the people coming over are doing some horrible things. And with the sanctuary cities, and with, the laws the way they are, catch and release and these kind of things, that there's very little that the federal ICE agents can do about it. And who, when it comes down to the state passing a law and the federal government passing a law, and the sheriff's deputies and the local law enforcement at the state and county level, they're kind of caught in the middle. Who do you listen to? If you're the state police, the governor is kind of your commander, and he tells you, you don't help the feds, deport this person. And you had the feds saying, well, you have to let us help, have to help us deport this person. That's the federal law. What do you do if you're a sworn officer? You can't serve two masters. And this is one of the things that President Trump is trying to work out, and he's getting pushback from mostly Democratic elected officials in these states. But the point is that the vitriol and the venom unleashed on President Trump, because the mainstream media screwed it up. The headlines after this were, of course, he's calling all immigrants animals. Well, you heard the clip. And the reporters, and I can tell you this as a journalist, the reporters who came back to you after that meeting either didn't listen to the meeting, didn't attend the meeting, or purposefully, and I wonder why, got it wrong. And I don't care what side of the political tent you're in. If you're a reporter and you ran a story in print or in broadcast saying that President Trump called all immigrants animals, you should resign now. You should quit. You blew it. You blew it in an unforgivable way as far as journalism goes. You totally screwed up the truth. And people, of course, jumped on the bandwagon. And there was one famous person on Twitter who had a blue check. believe his last name is Russo, said something to the effect of, I would rather have my daughter, get a little of this one, I would rather have my daughter date an MS-13 member than a Republican.
I don't really know what can be said to that. I mean, at least if she were dating the Republican, she probably wouldn't be gang raped, wouldn't be, trafficked, would still be alive. Just minor considerations, but I don't really know what to say to that. That just speaks of intellectual stupidity.
Well, it turns out that he doesn't have any children. I mean, as a father of 2 daughters and a granddaughter, I can tell you that, no, I would much rather have my daughter date an MS-13 member. And you know what? Or excuse me, a Republican. And you know what? I would rather have my daughter date a Republican than a liberal. Because what the liberals are saying here is that the MS-13, all of a sudden they're putting gang members on a pedestal, gang. These liberals are putting criminal, murdering, raping gang members, street thugs, on a pedestal to try to get at President Trump. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't really know what to say to that because, yeah, they probably intentionally got it wrong, as mainstream medias want to do these days. So, is anyone really surprised? No, nothing to see here. Move along.
But the fact that they got it wrong, and you actually have to give credit, believe it or not, to CNN, because CNN actually got it right. And they put the caveat in the story that he was talking about, the clarification, he was talking about MS-13 members.
Well, that's shocking, because, I mean, CNN these days, I call it Crazy News Network, but, we all have our special little names for it. So, to me, that's surprising. But kudos to them. Let's keep that upward trend going. But back to the Twitter wars, if you'd like to call them that. So, we already established that apparently a large contingent of people in the UK don't believe that parents have rights when it comes to their children. But a number of them seem to not believe in any natural or God-given rights. Verbatim, there are no natural or God-given rights. That is verbatim what one of these Twitter users replied to me, because basically I kept reiterating that the hospital that denied Alfie Evans nutrition and hydration tried to steamroll over his parents' natural rights, God-given natural rights as parents of that child. They seem to not believe in such things.
Well, you know what's scarier than that? If they're right, let's give them for 5 seconds that they're right. They're correct, 100%. There is no God-given or natural, so I would also assume that if God and nature can't give you rights, then nothing can.
Oh no, something can.
No, it can't. If it doesn't come from a higher authority or from the natural order of things, which people are questioning anyway. Boys don't know if they're boys, girls don't know if they're girls anymore.
No, but it does come from a higher authority. It comes from the state. It comes from the judiciary in the UK, which is impeccable in its level of professionalism and being detached from its cases and impartiality, because the judiciary is not composed of human beings.
Heard of this somewhere before.
Yeah, so
China, communist China, Socialist Russia, Nazi Germany.
You know, a few places. But yeah, basically one of the people with whom I was engaging said that we tried to copy the UK's perfect model of the judiciary, that it is completely independent from the state, because I was making the point that the state had medically kidnapped Alfie Evans and not allowing his parents to transfer him to a different hospital. But no, I was wrong, because the judiciary is the one that decided he was to stay where he was to stay, and they're completely separate from the government. So I was wrong, because technically they're two separate branches.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So if the judiciary is separate from the government, then they can't use government guns or law enforcement to force anybody to do anything.
Well,
they're separate.
I mean, they're working on it in London anyway. You know, I mean, the whole country has been de-armed in terms of bearing arms, and now they've been de-knifed. Pretty soon they're going to be de-knuckled. I mean, you're not going to be able to have regular fistfights outside of pubs. But, you know, I was gearing up to ask one of these people who, you know, is so smart, how it was going, trying to butter their bread with no hands left to do it, or no knives. But that tweet kind of, I guess I texted it, and then I had to set it aside because I was engaged in something else. And when I got back to it, it was gone. So I guess there must be a timeout. So I didn't quite get to post that, but I mean, it must be going pretty well because, you know.
Maybe they use spoons.
They must, because they're running out of things to butter bread with. I mean, hands, knives, it's getting tough.
Remember the old Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie? The sheriff of Nottingham goes to the Prince John, played by Alan Rickman, and he goes, and Alan Rickman said he wants Robin Hood's heart ripped out of him with a spoon, and his kind of nitwit sheriff cousin says, well, why would I use a spoon? And Alan Rickman says, because it will hurt more. So I guess the British want to hurt more.
They must. I mean, you know, it's just mind-boggling to me that this is how people live daily, and they think that, you know, the government has it all sorted out and they're taking care of them from cradle to grave. To me, that's an appalling way to live. I find it disturbing that they think this is okay and this is normal, that parents shouldn't have rights over their children. You know, I mean, they were sitting there and telling me that I don't care if the child lives or dies, you know, as long as the parents make that decision. And I basically responded with, of course I care if the child lives or dies. I mean, I am a pro-life advocate. That's not the issue. You're trying to muddle the issue. The issue is who has that decision-making power. And to my mind, to my American mind, the stupid American mind...
Stupid? Racist?
American Catholic mind.
Conservative.
Conservative even, yes. It's terrible.
You are the worst of all.
I'm deplorable.
You know, I'll tell you, if you identify as a male, you would even be worse.
Thank God I haven't fallen that far.
Well, you could change at any time.
Oh, God, we're not South African frogs. But anyhow, so, yeah, back to the point. You know, it's not, the issue isn't, you know, how I feel about whether a child lives or dies. It's who makes that decision, you know, and the only ones who should be making that decision, you know, obviously given appropriate medical advice. You know, I'm not saying that parents should be making willy-nilly decisions about severely ill children in the dark with no medical advice. Obviously, having received the doctor's advice, you know, they're the ones who are responsible for said child. They're the ones who brought the child into the world. You know, nobody but them can advocate more in the best interest of the child. You know, and apparently over there, it's, you know, a child is given an supposedly impartial guardian to advocate for the child's rights. And if what the parents wish is not deemed to be in the best interest of the child, then the state wins, essentially.
You know, there's an old saying, blood is thicker than water. And that was back in the day, and that the old adage meant that your family, you know, that those are usually in 99.9% of cases the people in the world you are closest to and have the most abiding interest in a person's well-being is their family. Mother, father, sister, brother, and I'll throw in, to a lesser extent, spouse. You know, certainly the children do. I mean, certainly my girls, my daughters have a vested interest in my well-being as their father. Certainly I have a vested interest in their well-being, my grandchildren's well-being. You know, more so than some bureaucrat sitting, you know, behind a pile of folders someplace.
Yeah, but they're trying to take that and twist it and turn it on its head, saying that, you know, the emotions that you feel regarding, you know, the person that you love, you care about, those are problematic when it comes to making these decisions, and that someone who is impartial and can clearly see, you know, what is in the best interest of the child should be the one making those decisions with appropriate sound medical advice from their doctors.
Oh, you mean the non-existent Sarah Palin death panels?
Yes, those precisely.
Yes, that don't exist.
No, they don't exist anywhere in the world.
Impartial bureaucrats who, when exposed to all the facts, can make a decision, a life or death decision about a human being, but that's not a death panel. And she was crazy for saying that.
Of course she was. Come on now, stop scaring people.
That's right, she could see Russia from her house.
Obviously she can't be trusted. She's
Obviously
colluding with the Russians by just seeing them from her
Well,
house.
she's Putin's puppet.
Somebody has to be.
Putin probably put her in the 2008 election.
Manchurian candidate, anyone?
Alaskan candidate.
We'll have to coin that.
We're just messing with you, Sarah. We love you.
Yeah, so this whole UK system of legality has just opened my eyes to something that I never even considered. I mean, living here in the US, you would not think such a thing would happen, because that's not the way our legal system is based. Yes, there are cases, you know, where things have happened that probably ought to have not happened, but by and large, you know, parents are allowed to parent their children. They're not medically kidnapped like Alfie Evans was, or Charlie Gard, which was, you know, basically a similar case last year. You know, parents don't have to go through this in America. There isn't some bureaucrat making the decision about whether their child lives or dies, or what type of treatment their child receives. They're the ones determining, you know, do I like what kind of care my child's getting? If I don't, maybe it's time to transfer them to a different hospital. You know, and that seems to be a foreign concept in the UK.
Well, the thing too is that, again, and we mentioned this last time around, you're hearing about these cases because these are two, you know, young children, you know, 20-some months old. But what if these were people in the 90s? What if they were senior citizens? I wonder how many cases that don't make the kind of national or international media waves that Alfie Evans and Charlie Gard made, when it's grandmama who's 95 in a nursing home. How many times has whatever decision been made to withhold hydration or nutrition or something in that system for senior citizens? And really, would the world care as much? Honestly.
I think that it's getting harder and harder to tell if the world cares, because you have pockets of support for such things, and it's getting harder to find people that don't support abortion, that don't support euthanasia. We've become immune almost to systemized killing of other human beings that are deemed inconvenient, whether they're too young or they're too old. They're too much drain on the system, they're too much trouble, they cost too much, they weren't planned for in the case of babies that are aborted. Ireland, actually, neighboring, of part of the UK, Ireland has an amendment to their constitution, the 8th Amendment, that protects the rights of unborn children and prohibits abortion in the country. They're actually having a nationwide referendum on the 25th to determine if they're going to remain pro-life or if they're going to bring abortion into Ireland. But they're one of the last vestiges of countries where life seems to matter, where life has a little bit more spark than it does on other shores, where, systematic killing is accepted.
It's not just about systematic killing either. There was, as we're recording this today, there was a school shooting in Texas. And right away, everybody jumped on the anti-gun thing. But one of the things that I would really like to know, and there's no doubt about these school shooting situations, in the last 10 or so years have become a thing that they really weren't before. But the question I really have isn't so much about taking away guns to make people safer. It's what's happening to these young people, 17, 16, 14 years old, 19 years old, that fill them with so much hate and with such a desire to kill and so little compassion for human life. Where did that come from?
I'll tell you where it came from. Or at least partially where it came from. It came from the breakdown of the family. When you start attacking the family, the traditional family, you end up with all kinds of bizarre societal behavior. And I think this is just a symptom of that. When you start telling people that having a mother and a father in a home is, just one of many configurations you can have for a family. You start chipping away at it slowly, incrementally. The sexual revolution helped quite a bit. Abortions help quite a bit. When you start breaking down the family and you decimate it to the level that it's at today, where you have so many children coming out of broken homes, so many children coming out of single-parent homes, children are confused even as to what gender they are. And there's 2 genders. It's not hard.
No, it's not.
No, we're not even going to go there because we could go on for days about that.
62 and counting.
Don't even get me started. Yeah, so I mean, when kids don't even know what gender they are, they're so confused, and there's no direction coming from the home and the family. You're going to have all kinds of chaos in society. Confusion begets confusion. Confused individuals beget a confused society. That's just the natural order of things, but, who knows if there's a natural order of things?
There is no natural order.
I mean,
you just heard what they said. There's nothing God ordained or nature. I
was schooled on that today, so pardon me.
Well, there's so much more educated than you are.
Absolutely, they're certified in Twitterese. Yeah. So but that's your answer, I think. And the more people try to answer the question with other symptoms instead of addressing the root cause, the more problems you're going to have, I think. I don't think this problem of school shootings or mass shootings in general is going to be fixed or addressed in this country not until, spoiler alert, not until guns are taken away, because, we see how well that's working in London. So no, I am not for repealing the Second Amendment, don't get me wrong. I fully support the right of Americans to bear arms. But it's not going to be addressed until you fix the root cause. And the root cause is the systematic decimation of the natural family.
And I would go farther to say, to bring this back to where we started, the lack of civility.
I was just going to say it.
In our discussions where we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are all coming from the same place. These are all coming from being brought up with basic right and wrong tenets, with basic manners, with basic empathy.
I think those are the first things, though, that are jettisoned when you have people that are hurting. A lot of times people forget what's underneath anger. A lot of times is hurt. Is what's underneath bitterness and anger, jealousy, is just plain old being hurt at some point. And I think that hurt comes from the lack of order that they have in their homes. That there's no stability, there's no direction, there's no positive force coming out of homes. Not just in America, around the world, but speaking because we live in America, specifically of American homes. Families today are not what families used to be. I don't think there's anyone out there that could argue differently. We may disagree on whether that's a positive or a negative thing. I would argue a negative thing, but I think that a lot of this lack of civility, in person, online, comes from hurt, and I think the hurt comes from the brokenness of the American family today.
I think you're right. As I said before, I think that my generation, as far as child rearing, we blew it. We blew it. For whatever reason. We are the generation that grew up thinking that our children, everybody needed to feel special, and everybody was a winner, and everybody gets a participation trophy. Because, heaven forbid, you have disappointment. What is it that, here in New Jersey, you have a school board right now looking to decide, because of one parent with one student who didn't make the cheerleading team, attended tryouts and she didn't make it. So now the school board is looking at putting a policy in place where everybody makes the cheer team all the time.
Because that teaches everyone how to aim for something and deal with it if they don't make the cut. That's not how you teach people anything. That's how you teach people that the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Before you know it, you're going to go to a basketball game, and they're just going to take the nets and the backboards down. And even if you're all the way to the other side of the court, if you take the ball and you just motion like you're going to shoot it, they'll give you 3 points.
Well, they might.
Just we can't have anybody fail and miss a shot.
I mean, eventually I think it would come to such silliness, but, you wouldn't really think it's silliness because, again, incremental steps. A little bit at a time. You just keep a little bit at a time. That's how erosion happens. I mean, ever look at, beach erosion, rock erosion, a little bit at a time. You just keep wearing it down.
Actually, that's a great analogy because the foundations of our country the bedrock, if you will, of our country, is being eroded into a Grand Canyon. And there are tribes on both sides of that canyon, and it doesn't seem like there will ever be any way to bridge that. That the common ground in the middle that people used to be able to walk across and kind of keep everything together is gone.
I don't know how I can really say it enough, and probably everyone listening and you too are probably quite sick of me saying it, but I think that middle ground that everyone used to walk across was the family. I think that because, you know, you knew your neighbors, you know, you had a stable force, you know, centering everyone in the home.
And there was, despite what probably someone on the left would tell you, there was a sense of community. And no one is saying that community does not have, and society as a whole doesn't have a role in shaping young people and how, but it's just, it was a very different role than it is today.
It wasn't the starring role.
No.
The starring role was parents parenting their children in their home without the intrusion of the state. You had the community supporting the family, but they weren't starring.
And usually reinforcing.
Exactly, reinforcing the morality, the values.
Right. If Johnny did something and it was bad, and the parents disciplined Johnny, everyone else in the community would support the parents for disciplining Johnny. They wouldn't call the parents names for disciplining him, and they wouldn't chastise the parents for doing what they had to do. And they would reinforce to Johnny that what your mom and dad was right.
Well, I don't think that there would be this concept of free-range parenting, you know, like kids are chickens. You know, free-range parenting, the concept wouldn't exist if the idea of community taking the starring role and raising the children as opposed to the parents hadn't become so overblown. You know, it's not raising children via committee. You know, it's raising children based on how the parents feel the children should be raised. You know, and the pendulum has swung so far in the one direction of wrapping your kids in bubble wrap, you know, and putting them in their crying closet, that you can't even let your kids outside for fear they'll be taken away because the community decided that you were a bad parent for letting your children outside unattended. Heaven forbid they learn a life lesson. You know, and decided they were going to call somebody and have your kids taken away.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, you know, free-range parenting became a thing because, again, the family's been chipped away at and community has taken the starring role in how children should be raised and deciding by committee that, you know, we can't have kids running around outside playing and, you know, they have to be indoors and supervised at all times because that's how they learn. Well, clearly, look at millennials. I can say that because I'm one of them. Clearly that hasn't worked very well. You know, you have kids coming out of college that don't know basic things about life, how to balance a checkbook. I mean, my sister is, you know, several years younger than I am, and when I went through high school, there was no such thing as personal finance as a course. Because of my generation, they instituted a class called personal finance.
It used to be there years before I took one.
So, you know, I just think that millennials just don't know how to do things that they should know how to do, you know, because these things are not being taught in the home with the family. They're being, assumed that the state is teaching them. The state, the community, the entity, we'll put it that way, as opposed to the two-parent, and it's a shame I really have to say it, the two-parent, heterosexual, natural family.
You can tweet Nicole with all your hate mail on that.
Oh, be my guest. I mean, we'll have fun. I had fun with all these people that, the last 2 days. It's been great. So, I'm not worried.
So, Nicole, would you like to tell people how they can help support this podcast with the tip on PayPal Me and with the Snark is Real?
So basically, we have a hashtag called the Snark is Real. We are featuring it on t-shirts. So if you go to Zazzle.com and search for the Snark is Real, you will find our store with t-shirts, and pretty much you can have it printed on anything, I believe. So the Snark is Real is basically what we do. So if you'd like to support us, please do. Every little bit helps to, keep this going. So
you can tip us also through PayPal Me as well.
That too. So there's multiple ways. Let us know what you think. Obviously, positive comments are preferable, but if you don't like what we're doing, feel free to tell us, you guys are terrible. That's fine too. We appreciate all kinds of feedback. And I think that about wraps it up for tonight.
It does. This is Charles W. Kim with Nicole M. Wells, and this is a Grill Report, and we'll see you next time.